before you click off this video and think to yourself, did I click on an old video? You didn't. Well, I mean, technically they're all old. They're all filmed prior. Anyhow, that is the current state of the machine right now. It is blown apart. So I wanted to drop a quick update at the beginning of this video because in this video, a lot's gonna go down, and I'm thinking that I might time lapse some of the assembly, but the current state of the machine as we talk, and like I said, it's gonna drastically change over the next few days or week or two, is we had to blow this thing completely apart to fully weld it. Nothing was welded. So with that being said, it is, I would say, I don't know, 98% welded. There's some small items that need welded still, but majority of it is. I started making the skid plate. It is almost done. I will show you how I did that at a later time in this video. We also ended up boxing in the shock mounts on the uppers there. Obviously the arms are pretty strong, but wanted a little extra support there. We boxed in the trailing arms down there. And then we also boxed in the upper shock mount in the rear as well. So that's all boxed. That's boxed. We wanted every part of the suspension that could move to be reinforced. So we also added some little bungs there, little spikes, little spiky boys, and some in the front. So since last time you've seen it, we added the roof, which is not on it. Nothing's on it. A few other little things. Right now I'm getting ready to throw some belt tabs in, harness tabs, so I can bolt the harness in. Weld those in. A few other little small items, but yeah, I mean, this thing is welded out, so we can start reassembly, or I'm thinking that the next clip you're gonna see is this thing isn't gonna have powder coat on it, but it's gonna have some color. I'm thinking while it's this far apart, I would be silly to not at least just spray it with some sort of spray paint. I would like to have the whole thing powder coated, but it's not done. It's nowhere near done. We're gonna end up adding more things to this. So I wanna be able to grind the spray paint off and touch it up and add as we go. So that's the reason we're not spending $2,500, $3,000, whatever it's gonna cost to have this thing fully powder coated one color, is because it's not done. I don't wanna be grinding up fresh powder coat and having to pay for it twice. So with spray paint, I can paint it now, and if we decide we're gonna add something, we can just grind it off, touch it up. So that's why we're gonna do that for right now, keep it from rusting, and then maybe at a later date we'll end up powder coating it. But for now, that's what we're gonna do. So stay tuned. So we went with the blue. I think it turned out killer. The blue and black really goes well together, especially with these wheels. Really happy with the way this thing looks. At this current point in time, it is what April, I think. I can't even remember. I think it's April. We went to the off-road games last month, probably 3 weeks ago. The machine performed phenomenal. Really gratifying to have that sense of completion after wheeling it. You know, I mean, that's what all this hard work's gone into, is that moment right there, wheeling this thing and the way it performed to the standards that I was building it to. You know, it performed exactly how. There is a few things that still need addressed. We'll go over them. But like I said, I'd love to walk you through everything that led up to this point that I didn't happen to catch on camera. So, I mean, for starters, it hasn't been washed since it's been to Utah. Its current form. As soon as I got back, I knew there were some things I needed to change. It needed more floor drains, so I blasted some holes back there, drilled some holes, whatever. I'm not going to go over all the stuff that I've done right now. I want to go over the stuff that led us to this point of getting this thing complete. So, in prior videos, you've seen that it ran. It had never moved. So, I started tossing it all back together, and I had some codes in the ride command, some canvas codes. Actually, they were in the cluster, and the ride command wouldn't work at all. And so I'm diagging this thing. I'm going through all kinds of possibilities of what it could be. I'm continuity testing and checking volts on all the canvas, high and low, to make sure that there's not a break in the wire, and that could be why I'm having an issue. I fought that for probably 3-ish weeks. I had all kinds of wiring specialists reaching out to me, helping me, trying to walk me through it. It was really great. And we ended up figuring it out. It ended up being the ride command unit itself. So I have a newer one over there that was originally for this machine that was out of like a Pro R or Turbo R. And for whatever reason, the canvas signal is different, and it was freaking everything out. So I put the one out of my Turbo S in it. Boom, everything worked. Shocks came alive. Everything was dialed. So that was the first obstacle we had to overcome. Then I had to have the EPS calibrated. As I mentioned before, the dynamic setup, you have to have, there's a sensor in there, you have to have it calibrated for steering input angle so that the shocks can compensate for which way your tires are turned. So I reached out to several dealerships, and nobody seemed to want to help on a custom build. There were a couple, but a lot of them flat out told me no. So I ended up finding a place local to us here in Lincoln, Nebraska. I think it's Elway, formerly known as Star City. They got me in at a very reasonable time, actually 2 days before we left, and got this thing programmed. Ended up not being as simple as just plugging it in and clicking a button. He had to pull the steering unit out and clock it, and there was a lot more in-depth of a process than expected. But we got that handled. So as it was at the dealership, I had only cruised this thing around in low gear. He put it in high gear to cruise it around the parking lot to try to get the steering centered. And he goes, there's no high gear. So I rushed home that night. Again, this is 2 days before we left for Utah. And when I'd done the gear reduction in this transmission, there was a snap ring that quite didn't slide into its groove, and it slid up and wasn't sitting in the correct spot, so that the dogs for that high gear couldn't slide down and mesh together and lock in the high gear. Simple fix. Glad it was that simple. Like I said, I only ended up, I think it was 3 hours, trans out and back in the car. So got that dialed. We had an overheating issue. I was chalking it up to the surge tank, just the way it's plumbed, being that the bleeder from the intercooler over there feeds it, and then the cylinder head feeds it as well, and the only drain is the turbo. So it's just constantly getting hot coolant. It never gets cool coolant. So we vented it back into the radiator. We ended up taking the spring out of this cap. So this plunger is up, so the coolant can just keep flowing back into the radiator. It's just a, circulating system that just never quits, so to speak. So we got the temps under control. Trying to think. Once we got there, they had a fuel leak. I'll come over here. I got this panel off. I can show you. there was a failure in one of the welds. Not a big deal. We got some tank fix. It's not pretty, but we goobed it on there. She's holding fuel, not leaking. It'll hold, surprisingly, around 7 gallons. So exactly what we were hoping for. I was able to ride an entire day with not having to worry about fuel. The only issue is I believe that when the fuel gauge starts reading that it's off of 100%, I'm probably only on a quarter of a tank at that point due to the tank design. So not the biggest issue there, but not ideal either. Once you see that fuel gauge start to move, you know you're needing fuel. We ended up ordering a muffler. I think that's a Vibrant off of Amazon. Cutting the straight pipe off, welding this on there. Totally changed the sound. I might insert a clip of it right now. So yeah, it sounds awesome. Not sure if I did the before and after. I'll try to do that. Mounted a fire extinguisher. But back to what I was saying. We got the sand hollow. That was an issue. Trying to think. There was several issues we had. We just overcame them as they happened. Right when we got there, the tank issue was the first thing. And upon putting this switch panel back together, I switched the winch and the headlight. Fried this Badland Apex. Brand new, never been used. It's done. It's junk. Need to get a new one. Unfortunate. Luckily, this thing's such a bad unit and never needed the winch, so never had to pull cable for myself. I did put it on the roof a couple times, so we just pushed it over. Oh yeah, when we were out there wheeling, I wish I had it here, but I'll put some clips of the obstacles that I did film. It wasn't great. I did a terrible job. Roast me now. I feel like this is more of a build channel than riding content. I'll try to do some riding content, but I get so eager to just do things that I forget to film it. But on an obstacle, I broke my steering shaft. I had it pinned real hard on its side. That's where most of this came from. In a real nasty V-notch, I had it on its side and it ended up popping the U-joint on the steering shaft. I have it in my pickup. I wish I could show you. Actually, I'm gonna grab that. Hang tight. All right, here's the steering shaft. So it popped this U-joint. It spread the ears of the joint and the caps fell out and we no longer had steering. Luckily, there was a couple of guys wheeling out there in I want to say it was some kind of pickup, but they had a carnage welder, which if you're not familiar with those, it's super sweet. It's like a little tiny stick welder in an ammo box, real compact, but it runs off your car batteries and allows you to have a mobile welder. So we took two 10 millimeter quarter-inch drive sockets, welded them bad boys in there as U-joint caps, slapped this thing back in, got me out of the trail. Probably could have rode the rest of the weekend like that. I'm definitely going to keep that one as a spare for just in cases. But we found one the next morning. A local guy sold me one for $100, so shout out to you. And we put that in, all good. So moving along here, I did have an issue while I was there of the axle kept dislocating in the rear. This one dislocated. That one actually dislocated to the point where it sheared the splines on the inner cup. Like, so this shaft here is splined, right? And it's got a splined swivel point that it slides through. It slid out of that, just enough to where it sheared all the teeth off that spline piece inside the cup. I had a spare, tossed it in, rode the rest of the weekend. I get home, the axle that I'd put in there, that spare, it is cooked too. So leads me to believe that we have a overextending problem. Why that is, some people believe limit straps. Some people don't believe in limit straps. They say that the shock body can only extend so far, the suspension can only travel so far, so on and so forth. I'm in between. I believe in limit straps. They definitely serve a purpose. But also, I'd prefer to not run them if I don't have to. This machine doesn't have a sway bar, so it's definitely traveling further than was intended stock, I would say. I would venture to say that they designed them to travel a little bit further than what the sway bar allows, being that you can take them off. But I also don't believe that I should have to limit the travel to that of what stock spec should be. This machine's built, granted the shock can only go so far, but it should have a little bit more travel than a stock machine, in my mind. So, after doing some diag and some looking around, this side is running a front axle in the rear. They're a titch longer than the rears. This is still a rear. It's going to get replaced with a front, and I'm going to try running fronts in the rear. Reason being is that it overextends, popping that knuckle out. And when we put the longer one in there, we full scrunch this side with the shock on it, and that axle still had side-to-side movement with it all the way scrunched up and all the way full droop. It still had movement. It didn't get tight. If the axle was too long, it would bind and probably just break immediately. So we're going to try that. We're going to try running front axle squared. Every machine's different in my mind. Not all of them are within the exact measurement of one another, just due to human error, I believe. So to have one axle or an axle company that makes an axle that's exactly the right length for your setup, not knowing what arms or what suspension you're on or anything, it doesn't seem accurate to me. Like, it seems like you'd have to shim it to be exactly right, in my mind. I could be totally wrong, but I think there's so many variables that come into play. I'm going to try running fronts. I'll let you know how it works out. I think it's going to solve my issue without having to run limit straps. Another thing we did before we left is we switched out these. We had like nylon bushings in there. We got some billet bushings. I had a fear that they would wear through after one ride, so I ordered some billet bushings, swapped them out. I'm trying to think as far as sand hollow goes. There is an issue that we had there that still isn't resolved. I'm still working on it. I've got a pretty good lead on what I think it is, but this thing will not let you go wide open without breaking up. I've changed the plugs. I've done a few things to try to correct it. I'm chalking it up to, I think this has possibly an ethanol E85 tune in it. I've tried reaching out to the previous owner of the ECU and all the setup because he said it was tuned to see what tune it's in. He will not respond. So I've been reaching out to Aftermarket Assassins. I can crack this ECU and get a tune for it. It's like $400. I just haven't spent the money yet. There's other things I was doing. And just life in general has been getting in the way of working on this thing. I've had a lot of things going on. Hence why this video's taken so long to come out. But we've been slowly plugging on things since we got back as far as upgrading this thing. As soon as we got back, like I said, we drilled those holes for the drain. We made this battery box. One of my buddies had a fear that a rock would get thrown off the tire and go right through the battery and I'd be out of battery. So we made this battery box, just bent a piece of flat stock up in the old press there. We added rock lights. There's one in every corner. There's a strip here. There's a strip under the dash. There's a strip under the hood. And then a pod in every corner. We did that. We made mounts. They'll get painted. They're billet right now, or just aluminum. one in each corner. We mounted them with rib nuts in the tube. We cleaned up some of the wiring with these like Christmas tree zips, drilled holes, popped them in. We've just been cleaning this thing up. We got an intake made for the clutch cover. I don't have it in right now, but it's just a piece of intercooler piping or aluminum, 3-inch, and it actually mounts to the clutch cover bolt right here. It's just got a tab that slides behind this, and it'll be yay tall with a filter with a sock on it. This filter right here, just an Amazon special. So that'll serve its purpose there. Like I mentioned, we added the fire extinguisher. I have a fear of this thing being that it's already been in a fire once, possibly catching on fire again, so I wanted to have a fire extinguisher. We did end up getting a new charge tube here from our boys at RPM. We got RPM charge tubes. That one was taped together. It was an old Hammers patch job. I still have it kicking around as a spare. I'm trying to think what else. I got some new springs for this thing. We found that we set ride height. The rear measures, I think, fully maxed out 16.5, which is too low for me. I'd like to be over 17. The front's over 17. So I'd like to be 17.5 inch squared, being it's a trail car. It's not like a hill bomb car. So we don't want it sitting real low. I want to be able to go over rocks and whatnot. So we got springs. We need to tune it still yet. I'd like to touch up some of the paint that we flawed. We are going to S'more in May. If you're not familiar with S'more, it's in Missouri, and it is a hardcore place to wheel. So we'll get some content there. That's coming up. I'm going to be in Kentucky racing here next week with the local racing team, TR Racing. So hopefully Tyler does good. Watch for that. I'm trying to think what else. Well, I got you. I'm running out. I'm sure there's more. I added a flag mount. In Sand Hollow, you have to run a flag. This is jank for right now, the exhaust mount. I wasn't sure if I was going to like this, so that's not permanent. That will get fixed. I don't know. That's the majority, the most of the things that we did. I'm sure there's more I could go over. We ended up swapping out some AR bolts. They were too short. They weren't hitting the nylon. I kept losing the nuts. Just some small things. Did the alignment. But yeah, I will insert the clips that I did take after this, after we close out here. So they're not great, but enjoy what is there and look forward to the next one. I do have some future builds coming up. I'm thinking about doing a build on the TRX 50. Or is that a 70? I don't remember. I think it's a 50. I'd like to do a full frame off build of that, make that thing real sweet. So if you guys are into that, let me know. And then this fall, I'm this close to pulling the trigger and doing some kind of vehicle on tons. So like 40-inch plus tires, maybe a truck, maybe something weird. I don't know yet. But if you guys want to see that, comment, let me know. But look forward to some content this summer of this thing, getting after it. We're hoping to really give this thing a beat down. Like I said, it works really well, and I can't wait to show you guys. So enjoy.
Really slick? Yeah, they're, here, look. But they don't get no traction out here?
Intersante. it.